All right. So today we're going to focus more on how to answer the questions and how to score well in your exam. Okay, so I will show you step by step how are they going to mark the questions in the exam, and then how are we going to extract the data from the questions. Okay, so that will be our main focus today, and we'll be doing a horizontal linear motion and also vertical linear motions today. Projectile motions, we'll keep it for the 2 hour sections tomorrow, I think. Right, so let us start. Okay, so exercise 2. Exercise 2 is for a horizontal linear motion. Okay, horizontal linear motions means that the object is moving in just a one-dimensional motions. So exercise 2, a car starts from the rest. So the key words rest. Okay, if you still remember what I told you in our previous lesson, all these terms, they actually have a hidden value in it. So rest means that the object is not moving. So not moving, what does it mean? It means the velocity is equals to 0. And then it accelerates uniformly for 5 seconds over a distance of 100 meter. So these are the informations that we can get from the question. Now I'm going to rewrite it in a list form. Okay, I'm going to list out all of the informations to see which equation can be used to solve this question. So first, okay, let us start from terms rest. So like I told you just now, rest, it means u equals to 0, ms negative 1. Given time, 5 seconds, okay, 5s, and then distance s, which is equals to 100 meter. And then the question asks you to find what? Find accelerations. So A is our unknown. So every times when you have 3 known variables, okay, known value, and one unknown, okay, then it means you can apply equations of linear motion. So what is the equations of a linear motions? We have 4 equations in total. So the first one is V equals to U plus AT, and then we have a V square equals to U square plus 2AS. And next we have S equals to ut plus 1 over 2at square. And the last one is S equals to 1 over 2u plus vt. So what am I going to do now? I'm going to compare. Okay, I'm going to compare my variables on the left hand side with the equations on the right hand side. So I have u, t, s, a. So as you can see here, one of the variable is missing, which is v. Now let us look at the equations on the right hand side. The first equation, s is missing. The second equation, t is missing. Third equations, v missing, and the last equations, a missing. So if you look at these 4 equations, okay, you know which one to use now. All right, so we don't have v in our information, list of information. When you look at the 4 equation, 3 out of 4, they have v. So equations 1, equations 2, equations 4. So obviously they are not our choice because they have v and we don't have any information about v. We don't want to find v. So in which it means the correct equations to be used in this question is equations number 3. So we are going to use s equals to ut plus 1 over 2at squared. So basically you just list out all of the information and the informations, the things that you want to find, then you compare it with the equation. It will tells you which equations to use. So s equals to ut plus 1 over 2at squared. So we have a 100 equals to 0 times 5 plus 1 over 2a and then 5 squared. Rearrange the equations, you will get a equals to 8m as negative 2. So how are we going to mark it in the exam? Now exam, because the equation is given, so equation itself you don't have a marks, you just have to know which one to use. Okay, so these 4 equations will be given in the exam. You just compare with the list of a formula and see which one to use. And the first mark will be given to the substitution. So this one is what we call G1. G stand for gantian. So substitute 1 mark, and then the final answer, this is JU1. Now, what does it mean by JU1? J means the value is a jawapan, and then U is a unit. So correct answer with correct unit, you get the 1 mark. So this is a typical 2 marks question. All right, so it's a very easy question. So it's a 2 marks questions. You got 1 mark for the substitution and 1 marks for the answer. All right. So now let's look at the questions 2. So questions 2, let us highlight the information first. So a plane on a runway, it takes 16.2 seconds over a distance of 1,200 meters to take off again from rest. So this is a keywords again. So assuming constant accelerations during takeoff, calculate the speed. So you want to calculate the speed on leaving the ground and the accelerations during takeoff. Now, the questions purposely tells you constant acceleration because these 4 equations, the 4 equations on the right-hand side, can only be used if your object is moving with constant acceleration. If it is not constant accelerations, then you cannot use this 4 equation. So again, I'm going to list out the information. I have a time t equals to 16.2 seconds, and then I have a distance s equals to 1,200 meter, and then it starts from rest. So from rest, I have a u equals to 0 ms negative 1. Question A, it asks you to calculate speed on leaving the ground. So that is your v. So v is unknown. So which equations to use? If you do look at the informations given, we have a t s u, and then we want to find v. So which equations contain all these 4 variables? Obviously the 4th equation. Okay, the 4th equation. So we're going to use s equals to 1 over 2 u plus vt. So s is 1,200 equals to 1 over 2. U is a 0 plus v times 16.2. So rearrange the equations. Your final velocity v is 148 meter per second. So again, this one is a 2 marks question. Substitution 1 marks. Final answer with correct unit 1 mark. All right. And then let's look at questions B. Questions B, it asks you to calculate acceleration. So A is unknown. So again, you look at the questions. Now you have a T, S, U, and then you have you want to find A. So which means we are going to use third equations because we don't have velocity. So third equations, what do we have? We have a S equals to UT plus 1 over 2 AT squared. Okay, UT plus 1 over 2 AT squared. So S is 1,200 equals to, now the U is 0. So 0 times 16.2 plus 1 over 2, and then A is the unknown 16.2 squared. Rearrange equation, A is equals to 9.13 ms negative 2. All right. So most of the time, we need to choose the equations right now. Questions B. Questions B, actually you can choose to use the information from questions A, which is 148 meter per second. But I always encourage my students to look at the main question first, see whether we have enough information or not. If we have enough information, we try to avoid using the value from previous question. Okay, if you use the answer from questions A and it is wrong, for example, now you got a 200 meter per second for V, so it is a wrong answer. So if you use it in questions B, then what does it mean? It means questions B would be wrong as well. All right. So if possible, we try to avoid using the value from previous question. Unless we don't have enough information from main question, then yes, okay, you must use the information from questions A. But now obviously we have enough informations. We have a 3 known variable based on just main question, okay, and then therefore you can straight away use a T, S, and U, okay, without using V. If you want to use V, it doesn't mean that you are wrong, okay, it is still correct. Just I encourage you to refer to the main question first. All right, we try avoid using the value from questions A, because sometimes if the value is wrong, then your questions B would be wrong. Then that would be a 0 marks, okay, the marks will be deducted. That would be an issue in giving the marks. So questions A and questions B, okay, 2 marks for each question. So this is a typical 4 marks question. All right, so you have A and B, A 2 marks, B 2 marks. So if you don't want to use S equals to UT plus 1 over the AT square, you use other equations, go ahead. Okay, that is fine. That is fine. So you have more than one method that can be used to solve questions B. All right, actually you can use either one equation because now you have 4 pieces of information. You have a T, S, U, and also V. So you can use either one. Just that I encourage you guys to refer to the main question. Okay, now let's look at questions 3. Questions 3 is a bit tricky. Okay, the reasons is because it uses different unit. So when it comes to these types of questions, other than you need to know how to extract the information from the questions, you also need to check its unit. So question 3, the driver of a pickup truck going 100 km per hour applies the brake, giving the truck a uniform deceleration of 6.5 ms negative 2. Now, question tells you 6.5 ms negative 2. It gives you a positive value. But then it also gives you the terms deceleration, which means this is a negative value. You yourself are going to add a negative in your equations, in your solution. All right, so what travels 20 meter. Questions A, what is the speed of the truck at the end of the distance? Okay, and if you take notes, if you notice, the question states a unit. It wants you to write the answer in terms of km per hour. Okay, so make sure you take notes. And the question B asks you to calculate the time. So let us list out the information first. Now, we have a 100 km per hour, we have meter per second square, and then we have meter. To make it easier to solve this question, okay, I will change km per hour into meter per second first. All right, why? Because if you want to change ms negative 2 into kmh negative 2, that would be much more complicated. Then you convert km per hour into meter per square. Okay, and then for questions 1, after you solve the questions, then you convert the unit from ms negative 2 back to its kmh per negative 1. All right, that would be easier for me instead of converting the unit in terms of s negative 2. So now let us look at the 100 km per hour. So 100 km per hour, I'm going to change it into fraction form first. So 100 km over 1 hour. So 100 km equals to 100 times 10 to the power of 3 meter. 1 hour equals to 3,600 seconds. So eventually you are going to get a value which is equals to, let me see, which is equals to 27.78 meter per second. Okay, so this is a unit conversion for km per hour. You need to convert it first so that you can solve it. So in a linear motion, you need to make sure every single variables, they have the same unit. All right, if you use km, then all of them must be in km. If you use hours, then all of them must be in hours. If you use meter, then you just change everything into meter. And usually I would prefer SI unit. Okay, so now I have a 27.7 meter per second, and this is the value for our initial velocity. So U equals to 27.78 meter per second. And then I have a deceleration. So deceleration negative 6.5 ms negative 2, and then the distance given is s equals to 20 meter. So let's solve questions A now. So questions A wants you to solve for speed. So speed is V. So V is unknown. Now I have U, I have A, I have S, and I want to find V. So the equations that I'm going to use is V square equals to U square plus 2AS. So V square equals to 27.78 square plus 2 negative 6.5 times 20. So remember to add negative into your solutions, into your equations. All right. Without this negative, the marks for substitution will be deducted. All right. It is part of the substitution. So you're going to get V is equals to 22.62 meter per second. So from here, I want to change it back to km per hour because that is being asked in the question. Questions ask you to change your final answer into km per hour. So how am I going to change it again? So to make it easier, I'm going to make it in a fraction form again. So it is 22.62 meter over 1 second. So I want to change meter per second to km per hour, meter to km. 22.62. Now, just now from km to meter, we times. Okay, we multiply times 3 to the times 10 to the power of 3. So now you want to change from meter back to km, you use divide. Divide 10 to the power of 3. That is km. Okay, km. Oh, wrong color. So km. And then divide by 1. Okay, so just now you use a 1 times 3,600 second. So what are you going to do now? To change from second to hours means that you need to divide. So divide 3600. So the unit will now be in hour. So the final answer is 81.43 km per hour. So that is how you do unit conversion. Okay, so from km to m, you times. From m to km, you divide. From hours to second, you times. And then from seconds to hours, you divide. Okay, now let's look at questions B. Time. So questions B, time is an unknown. So we have a U, A, and S. So what are we going to do next? So U, A, S, and then T. So we use S equals to UT plus 1 over 2AT squared. So U, T, okay, S is 20, and then U is a 27.78. T is unknown. And then plus 1 over 2. Now this A is a negative value, negative 6.5 T squared. Now if you look at this equation, all right, you have a T and also T square. When you simplified it, when you solve these equations, you will get two different T. So which T to be used? Okay, which T to choose as our final answer? So if you have one positive, one negative, then obviously you are going to choose the positive value. If you have two positive value, then you go for the smaller value. All right, you go for a smaller value because it indicates that that is the first time that you're going to get this distance, okay, or this speed. So our T, okay, is equals to 0.794 second. So T is equals to 0.794 second. So remember, if you have 2T, okay, if you got a 2 answer, then you go for the positive value. If both of them they are positive, then you go for the smaller value. All right, in a linear motion. So linear motion, we go for smaller t. So that is questions number 3 for you. Okay, that is questions number 3 for you. So you can write down first. Okay, this question is a bit long, so I give you 1 minute to write down the answer. Right, I give you 1 minute to write down the answer. Let us proceed to the next question. Okay, so next one, a speedboat. Okay, now this question is very similar to the previous questions. So a speedboat is moving at 30 meter per second, approaches a stationary buoy marker 100 meter ahead. And the pilot slows the boat with a constant acceleration. Now, this question is being very nice to use because it gives you negative accelerations already. So you don't have to think whether you want to use positive or a negative value. So sometimes you will have questions like this, where they give you negative, then straight away you can use it. But some questions, like the previous questions, they will tell you in terms of works. It mentions deceleration. So you yourself have to know that you have to use negative sign in your calculation. So how long does it take for the boat to reach the buoy? And then you have how long, means you're looking for time, and then the final velocity. Okay, and the final velocity. So how are you going to solve it? Again, as usual, we are going to list down the information first. So u equals to 30 meter per second. And then you have a s, which is equals to 100 meter. And then acceleration negative 3.5 ms negative 2. All right, and then questions A, how long? So it's asking for time. So t is an unknown. So which equations to use? Now you have u, s, a, you want to find t. So equation is s equals to ut plus 1 over 2 at squared. So s is 100 equals to 30t plus 1 over 2 negative 3.5t squared. So for this question, if I'm not mistaken, you will get a positive and a negative time. This questions you will get two positive. So you will get t equals to 4.53 second, or your second value is a 12.61 second. So when you have two positive value, we go for the one with a smaller value. Okay, so you need to rewrite one more sentence with these three dots to tell the examiner this is your final answer. So t equals to 4.53 seconds. So this is our final answer. Okay, you need to choose one. You cannot leave two answer in your final answer. Okay, you cannot leave two value in your final answer. So what happens in exam if you leave both of them as your final answer? You will get 0 mark. Okay, you will get 0 mark. Why? Because examiner won't help you to choose your answer. You need to choose the answer for the examiner. So if you leave 4.53 second and a 12.61 second as your final answer, then your final answer JU is 0. Okay, because you give two answers, you don't know which one is correct. You ask examiner to choose for you. So in exam, remember, you can only give one set of solution. If you give two set, then you will be given 0 mark. All right, or some examiner, they are nice, they will mark the first set, second set they will just ignore it. Then in that case, you might still get some mark. Okay, so it depends. All right, it depends. So questions B. V is unknown. Okay, so you have a USA, you want to find V. So V square equals to U square plus 2AS. So V square is then equals to 30 square plus 2 negative 3.5, and then S is 100. Okay, and your V is then equals to 14.14 ms negative 1. So that is how you solve this question, right? That is how you solve this question. So this is the last questions in horizontal linear motion. All right, I give you 2 minutes to tidy up your 4 questions. These 4 questions, see which part of it you don't understand. You go through these 4 questions again. All right, if no question, then we will proceed to vertical linear motion. So vertical linear motion is slightly different. Okay, so 2 minutes from now for you to go through these 4 questions again. If you have any questions, make sure to ask.
Madam,
Yes?
yang kan from the hour tu saat, daripada jam ke saat, macam mana dapat yang 3,600 saat tu?
Oh, yang previous question.
Yes.
Macam mana dapat 3,600? Because it's 1 hour. Okay, 1 jam. Kamu ada 1 jam. 1 hours is equals to 60 minutes. And 1 minute, this is 1 hour, and then 1 minute is equals to 60 seconds. Therefore, what does it mean? 1 hour is equals to 60 minutes times 60 seconds. So you got 3,600 seconds.
Oh, okay. Thank you, madam.
All right. Okay, so if no other questions, then we'll proceed to vertical linear motion. So vertical linear motion, now this vertical, when it comes to vertical linear motions or projectile motion, I always encourage my students to sketch the diagram. Why sketch the diagram? Because it helps you to identify whether the value given is a positive or a negative value. Okay, so let's look at questions 1. Object is released again, you see, from rest. The questions it doesn't tell you what is the values of initial velocity, but they give you in terms of works. So rest again, it represents 0. So at height 20 meter from building H, determines the time and velocity when it reaches the ground. So let us sketch a diagram first. So now you have a ground, and then this is the building H. Okay, building H. And then the height of this building is a 20 meter. Right? And then your object is being released from here. This is your object. So it tells you release the object from rest, which means your U is equals to 0 ms negative 1. So let's see. Okay, let's extract the information from the question. So we have a U equals to 20 plus 0 meter per second. And then we have a S. Now, if you look at the questions, it tells you S is 20 meter. But if you look at the diagram, okay, this is the importance of the diagram. You look at this diagram, this 20 meter is located below the object. So if it's located below the object, then what does it mean? It means it is a negative value. So your S is equals to negative 20 meter. Okay, S is equals to negative 20 meter. And then it asks for time and also velocity. If you notice, what is missing? Acceleration is missing. So when it comes to acceleration, when it comes to vertical motion, the moment you release the object, the moment object leave your hand, okay, what does it mean? It means now the object is moving in the free fall motion. So in that case, A is equals to negative 9.81 ms negative 2, because now the object is in free fall motion. All right. So now you have USA question asking for T. So the first part of the question, we need to find T. So T, USA, so S equals to UT plus 1 over 2 AT squared. So if you notice, I use equations with A. All right, in our lecture, I showed you the equations with G, but you need to change the signs into negative. But I don't encourage you to do so. Why? Because you will get confused. Sometimes you might use the wrong equations in horizontal motions, for example, or in the projectile motions, and so on. So we stick to just one equation, plus 1 over 2 AT squared. Okay, we don't use minus 1 over 2 GT squared, because it will make you confused. If you use negative 1 over 2 GT in a horizontal motion, then you are definitely going to get wrong answer. Okay, so to avoid all those are careless mistake. We stick to just one equation, but then when it comes to value, we use a negative value in a vertical motion. So stick to negative 9.81. So s equals to ut plus 1 over 2at squared, and our s is now negative. Remember to include negative in your calculation. So 0t plus 1 over 2 negative again 9.81 t squared. So t is equals to 2.02 second. Okay, t is equals to 2.02 second. And the next, the question is asking for velocity. So v. So v equals to what? Now, let's look at the equations. We have a USA, we want to find v. Okay, so we use v squared equals to u squared plus 2as. Right now, this is a typical example why I don't encourage you guys to use a t from first part of the question. If you got this t wrong, let's say you got 2.02, then your v definitely will be wrong. Okay, in this case, for this question, your v is definitely going to get 0 mark. For previous questions, sometimes they will have something called error carry forward. So you might still get marks for the substitution, even though the answer from question A is wrong. But when it comes to this question, there's no sub-questions A or B. They combine both times and velocity in one question. So in this case, if your t is wrong, then v is definitely wrong if you use the values of t. Okay, kalau kamu guna nilai t dalam soalan ini dan t kamu salah, v terus tak payah tanda. Definitely kosong markah. Kalau untuk case sebelum ini, disebabkan dia ada sub-questions A and B, so kadang-kala kalau A kamu salah, for example yang ini, so kadang-kala kalau kamu punya A salah, B masih dapat markah untuk solution. Okay, because you substitute and you substitute the questions, the answer from previous question. But when it comes to this question, okay, this is questions 1, where there's no sub-questions A or B, and the t is wrong, you use the values of t in your v, the calculation for v, then definitely you're going to get 0 mark for v. All right. That's why I always encourage you to use the information from main question, which is this 3 value. Try to avoid using the values that you calculate by yourself, because we don't know what is there might be there might be a mistake, okay, especially a careless mistake in your calculations. So v square equals to 0 square plus 2 and then negative 9.81 and a negative 20. Now, if you look at this substitution, the substitutions for v, if you forgot to include a negative sign, okay, if you forgot to include one of the negative sign, then you won't be able to solve this equation. Okay, you won't be able to solve this question. Why? Because you cannot square root a negative value. It will give you an imaginary number. So for example, some students, they forgot to put a negative 20. Okay, they forgot to put a negative here. So they straight away put a 0 square plus 2 times negative 9.81 times 20. Then the next step, you will get max error. So it means you are missing the negative at somewhere. All right. So some students, they will straight away ignore the negative sign. In that case, you will get 0 mark here because you got a wrong concept. So wrong concept means that even if your final answer is correct, you are still going to get 0 mark. Okay, so kadang-kala pelajar dia tercicir satu negatif, tetapi dalam calculator dia terus ignore semua negatif. Sebab apa? Sebab kalau dia guna negatif 9.81 dan positif 20, dia dapat max error. So apa yang pelajar suka buat? Dia terus key in 9.81 sebagai positif. So dalam situasi itu, apa yang kamu akan dapat? Kamu akan dapat kosong markah juga. Why? Because you don't know how to solve it. You got the wrong concept. Okay, you got the wrong concept. So in that case, even though your final answer is correct, okay, you got a 19.81, but you're still going to get 0 mark for the answer because you get the answer correct by coincidence. You don't understand the concept. Okay, kebetulan sahaja kamu dapat jawapan yang betul. Alright, now let's go back to the answer. Now you have a v squared. Actually, when you square root a value, you are going to get plus minus 19.81 meter per second. So again, now plus minus, what does it mean? It means now you have 2 answers. So you are going to choose which one to use as your final answer, whether the one with a positive sign or the one with a negative sign. In horizontal motion, this is not an issue. Straight away, we use positive sign. Why? Because we always assume direction of motion is positive. But when it comes to vertical motion, you cannot do like this. You must take into consideration both positive and negative. Okay, because you need to check what is the directions of the object, whether it's going up or going down. Vertical, you can have an object that is going down, then in that case, it must be negative. It is unlike a horizontal motion. Horizontal motions, we take directions of motion as positive. Means that if your object just going to the left, then you can assume everything is positive. If it's just going to the right, you can also take everything as a positive. But when it comes to vertical motions, you cannot do like this. Okay, if object going up, it can be positive, but if the object going down, it must be negative. All right, that is the difference between horizontal and vertical. And that is also another reason why I asked you to sketch diagram. All right, so let's go back to the diagram. Now you drop an object, okay, and then it reaches the ground. Now these types of question actually is a bit misleading. Okay, it asks you to calculate the velocity when it reaches the ground. Actually, it is asking for the velocity right before it becomes zero. Okay, the moment it hits the ground, okay, the ball will stop for a moment. We don't want to take V0 because V0 has no meaning. The velocity that we want to use is the velocity right before it hits the ground, right before it reaches the ground. All right? So right before it hits the ground, the object is still moving downwards. Okay, it's still moving down. So what does it mean? It means you must have a negative velocity. So in this case, the velocity that we are going to choose, okay, is V equals to negative 19.81 ms negative 1. Okay, so you are the one that going to decide whether you want a positive V or a negative V. So according to our diagram, right before it hits the ground, it is still moving downwards. The direction is still going down. Therefore, we have a negative V. Okay, therefore we use negative V. So is that clear? How to use positive and negative sign, especially in a vertical motion. So vertical motions, you need to take into considerations the direction. Horizontal motion is not that important because we use directions of motion as positive direction. All right. So I give you 2 minutes to digest, to write down all this information. Okay, especially where to use positive, where to use negative. How do we know whether it's positive or negative? Okay, for S and for V. It's all based on the diagram. Okay, kalau ada apa-apa tak faham, kena tanya ya. Because after we are done with the vertical motions and the horizontal motions, we need to combine both of them in our projectile motion.
Madam,
Yes?
saya kurang jelas lah pasal negatif positif V tu.
Kamu confused pasal negative dan positive V? Okay, kamu kena kembali kepada diagram. So diagram, in a diagram, you drop something. Okay, kamu drop satu objek. So bila kamu drop satu objek, mesti dia akan jatuh ke bawah kan? So bila dia jatuh ke bawah, sebelum dia kena pada lantai, arah dia masih gerak ke bawah. Okay, dia punya motion sepanjang dia jatuh. Dia punya arah adalah ke bawah. So dalam case ini, kita kena pilih V sebagai nilai negatif. Sebab apa? Sebab arah dia ke bawah. Okay, kalau kamu throw objek, kalau kamu baling objek ke atas, okay, dalam case itu, kamu kena pilih V sebagai positif. Dia tengok arah objek kamu pada posisi akhir. So posisi akhir objek ini adalah di sini. Okay, adalah di sini. So dia ke arah bawah, jadi kita pilih negatif. Okay, so untuk horizontal dia tak kisah. Kalau horizontal, objek kamu gerak ke kanan, kamu anggap kanan sebagai positif. Objek kamu gerak ke kiri, kamu boleh anggap kiri sebagai positif. Dia tak jadi isu. Tapi bila dia sampai ke vertical motion, okay, kamu tak boleh anggap dia sebagai positif ke arah bawah. Sebab apa? Sebab kita punya S dengan kita punya A. Kita sudah ambil kira arah bawah adalah arah negatif. So, kita tak boleh lagi anggap arah bawah sebagai arah positif. Jadi, kita terpaksa pilih. Okay, pilih V kita. Kita nak positif ke kita nak negatif. So, macam mana pilih? Dia kembali kepada diagram. So, diagram beritahu kita objek ke arah bawah, jadi kita ambil negatif. Okay, kalau kamu baling objek, nanti kita akan tengok di soalan ketiga. Kalau kita baling objek ke atas, dan kita akan dapat nilai positif. So, okay, boleh faham?
Okay, faham. Terima kasih, Madam.
Alright. Okay, so let us proceed to the next question. So next question is very similar to questions 1, but now instead of dropping an object, you throw it. You throw downwards, directly downward with an initial speed of 8 meter per second. Okay, from a height 30 meter. So let's draw a diagram. So again, this is the ground, and then this is the building, and then this is the object. So the height of the building is 30 meter. And according to the questions, now you have U is a non-zero value. It is equals to 8 meter per second. But now you throw it downwards. If you throw it downwards, then your initial U should be a negative value, okay, because it's going down. So now let us list down the information. So we have a U equals to negative 8 ms negative 1. And then our S again should be a negative value because it is located below the original position. Okay, below the object. So 30 meter located below, therefore we use a negative sign. So this involves a vertical linear motion. So the moment you throw something and it leaves your hand, it undergoes free fall motion. So A is equal to negative 9.81 ms negative 2. Okay, negative 9.81 ms negative 2. So questions B and questions A asking for time taken. So T is our unknown. So U, S, A, and T. So we are going to use S equals to UT plus 1 over 2 AT squared. So S is a negative 30 equals to negative 8T plus 1 over 2 negative 9.81 T squared. Right? So eventually you're going to get two different time, one positive and one negative. So we go for the positive value. So T equals to 1.79 second. All right, so you will get a negative value. I think it's equals to 3.42 if I'm not mistaken. So 3.42 is negative. So we ignore that value. We take T equals to 1.79, which is a positive value. So questions B. Questions B, again, asking for speed when it reaches the ground. So again, it's asking for the final velocity just right before it stops. So V is unknown. We have U as A. Again, we're going to use V squared equals to U squared plus 2AS. Right? So V squared is then equals to negative X squared plus 2 negative 9.81 negative 30. So V, you're going to get plus minus 25.55 ms negative 1 again. So let's go back to the diagram. So that object is dropping, and then just before it hits the ground, it is still going down. So again, what does it mean? It means we have a negative V because it's going down. Therefore, our final answer, V is equals to negative 25.55 ms negative 1. So this question is similar to the previous question. The only difference is one is you drop an object. When you drop an object, initial velocity is 0. Okay, and then the second question is you throw. So when you throw something, it's moving with an initial velocity. Okay, it's moving with an initial velocity. All right. Next, so this question is still considered quite simple. So next one, okay, this one we throw something downwards, objects moving down. starting from quotient 3, now your object is moving up. So let's see, how are we going to solve it? So now you throw an object vertically upward with an initial velocity. Okay, so now you have initial velocity u equals to 20 meter per second. Determines the maximum height, okay, and the time taken. So let us draw a diagram first. Okay, so this is a diagram. Now you throw something upwards. So when you throw something up, our initial velocity is a positive value because it's going up. So 20 meter per second. All right, so let us list down the information first. So we have u equals to 20 meter per second. And then we have a, which is always equals to negative 9.81, m as negative 2. It seems that we don't have enough information to solve questions A, right? Because question A is asking for maximum height. It's asking for height, which is our S. S is unknown. But if you look at the questions again, it mentioned what? It mentioned the term maximum. So when you have a maximum height, what happened at maximum height? So if this is your max height, object will stop for a while. Okay, so which means our V is actually equals to 0. Because maximum height, object stop, therefore V is 0. Okay, object stop at maximum height. So the term maximum itself, again, it carries a hidden information. Where this hidden information give us V equals to 0, ms negative 1. It gives us a value, the value for your final velocity, right? So now we have U as U, A, V, and we want to find S. So again, we are going to apply V square equals to U square plus 2AS. So V square is 0, and then U is 20. So 20 squared plus 2, negative 9.81 S. So your S should be a positive value, 20.4 meter. Okay, 20.4 meter. And then the time taken, so time taken will be easy because now you have U, A, and then you know that the V is equal to 0. So therefore, okay, for questions B, T is unknown. So U, A, V, and T, we use V equals to U plus AT. So 0 equals to 20 plus negative 9.81 T. Time is then equals to 2.04 seconds. So this is how we solve a question. Okay, this is how we solve the question. So in these questions, your velocity is positive because it's going up. Okay, because it's going up. Right. Next, questions 4. Questions 4, once again, is a very interesting question. Okay, because it carries a lot of hidden information. It has your concept. You must have a very strong concept in order to answer questions 4. So if an object is thrown upwards with an initial velocity 10 meters per second, what is the final velocity when it reaches the ground? Okay, and what is the times of flight? So what does it mean by when it reaches the ground? So let's draw a diagram. So from ground, you throw something up. Okay, so this something up, this object is equals to 10 meters per second. It's moving with an positive initial velocity. Okay, it's moving with a positive initial velocity going up. So it's going up, and then it reaches a maximum height, and then it drops. Okay, and then it drops, and it goes back to the ground. So what can you see from the diagram? So it goes up and it goes down. Okay, it goes back to its original height. Okay, it goes back to its original height. So let us extract the information first. So we have U equals to positive 10 meters per second. Okay, A is always equals to negative 9.81, ms negative 2. Now, if you look at the diagram, from ground reaches maximum height and then it goes back to ground. It reaches the ground again. So it means your SY, your vertical motion, your S is actually equals to 0 meter. Okay, your displacement is equals to 0 meter. And then when SY is equals to 0, when it goes back to the same height, actually you don't even have to calculate final velocity. Okay, you can explain it. But if you don't know how to explain, of course, okay, you can calculate. So what is a V? So now you have UASV, so V square equals to U square plus 2AS. And then your V square equals to a 10 square plus 2, negative 9.81 and 0. So V equals to plus minus 10 meter per second. And then you choose the V as a negative value. Why? Because when it goes back to the ground, you have a negative V. So negative 10 ms negative 1. So this is if the question asks you to show why is it negative, okay, or if you don't know how to what is the relationship between this initial and this final position, then you can show it by using a calculation. Okay, that is nothing wrong. But for those of you, if you understand the concept, what can you say? Now, because your SY is equals to 0, okay, because your SY is equals to 0, so the object is now at the same level as its initial value, its initial velocity, yes. So now the final position, okay, final position is at same level as the initial position, okay, as initial position. So what does it mean? It means the magnitude of V is equals to U, okay, but opposite in direction, okay. Therefore, V is straight away equals to negative 10 ms negative 1. All right, so if you don't want to show the calculations, you can explain it. Okay, you can explain it. So basically, you can say V is equals to U, but in the opposite direction. Okay, why? Because of SY equals to 0. So the most important thing is the SY equals to 0. So when SY equals to 0 and an object undergoes free-fall motion, then your initial and your final velocity, they will have the same magnitude, but then opposite in direction. All right. So once you have a V equals to negative 10, you can then calculate the time. Okay, or you can straight away use the informations here to calculate the time. So questions B, let me find somewhere else. So questions B. So B, time is an unknown. Okay, time is an unknown. We have a UAS. So S equals to UT plus 1 over 2 AT square. S is 0 because it goes back to ground, and then equals to 10t plus 1 over 2 negative 9.81 t squared. So t is equals to 2.04 second. Okay, 2.04 second. So basically for questions B, you can use any of the equations to solve it. Why? Because now you have V equals to negative 10, you have S equals to 0, you have U equals to 10, you have A equals to negative 9.81. So any equations can be used to solve questions B. All right. So this one, I give you a 1 minute to write down, especially the one in the sentence. Okay, make sure you understand the concept. Because this type of questions, well, it seldom come out in the subjective question. Most of the time it come out in the objective question. Okay, because you don't even need to calculate. Straight away, you know V is equals to negative 10 based on the question, based on the diagram, right? Because it is at the same level. So 1 minute for you to write it down, especially the one in terms of words. Make sure you understand the concept. Okay, make sure you understand the concept. Okay. So let's look at the last question. Okay, the last questions for today's class. So this question, I will just give you the idea on how to solve it. So you solve it by yourself, all right? You try it by yourself. So let us list down the information for each of the question. Okay, and then you are the one that going to select which equations to use. So a ball is thrown from top of a building and is given an initial velocity. So what do you have? You have this initial velocity at position A. Okay, now you have 4 positions. So make sure you know this 10 meter per second is for which position. So the building is 30 meter high. Okay, and the ball just misses the edge of the roof on its way down, as shown in figure. So this question, okay, it seems like a projectile motions questions, but actually it's a vertical linear motion. All right. Why? Because it asks you to assume the ball is very close to its original position. Okay, it drops just right beside the initial position. It just sang it a little bit when it drops. So this is not a projectile motion. This is a vertical linear motion. So questions A, calculate the maximum height. Again, you have the works maximum height of the stone from point A. So maximum height, okay, now let's see. Maximum height, it refers to which position in the diagram? It refers to position B. Okay, positions B. So positions B is a maximum height in which it means at this position, your V is equals to 0 ms negative 1. So the informations that we have for questions A is the initial velocity is 10 meter per second. And then V is equals to 0 meter per second. And A is equals to negative 9.81 ms negative 2. All right, and then we want to calculate the height, which is S. So S is our unknown. Okay, S is our unknown. So this is the information that we have for questions A. Now let's look at questions B. Questions B, the time taken from point A to point C now. So you want from point A to point C, which means C is now your final position. So again, if you look at the diagram, what can you see? So at point C is at the same level as your point A. So what does it mean? It means your Sy is equals to 0. It means your V is equals to negative 10 meter per second. Okay, because of what? Because A and C, they are at the same level. So the information that we have, again, we want A and C. So A, we have initial velocity U equals to 10 meter per second. And then we have A equals to negative 9.81 ms negative 2. According to the diagram, we have S equals to 0 meter. And then we have a final velocity equals to negative 10 ms negative 1. Question asking for time. So basically, you can use any of the equations to solve questions B. Now, question C. Question C now is from A to D. So you want the information at point D now. All right. So let's see how are we going to solve it. So question C, initial position is still A. So we have U equals to 10 meter per second. A is equals to negative 9.81 ms negative 2. All right. Now S. Remember, S refers to displacement. Displacement means that we are just going to look at the shortest distance between initial and final position. All right. So the shortest distance between initial and final position is this, 30 meter. And this 30 meter is located below initial position. So it's negative 30. All right. It's negative 30 meter. So you want to find time. So now you have enough information already. All right. You have enough information already. So questions D also, you want to find the information at point D. So basically you can use same set of the information where U equals to ms negative 1 and then A equals to negative 9.8 ms negative 2, S equals to negative 30 meter, and then what is the V? All right. So remember, V should be negative because at point D, object is still going down. So negative V. Okay, so that's it. Okay, that's all for today. So you may leave the class now. All right, if you have another class, you can straight away proceed to another class. All right, so if you have any questions, you post in a Telegram group. All right, jangan masuk lewat ke kelas yang seterusnya. So kamu boleh snapshot and then leave class. So any question, you just post in the group. All right, so that's all for today.
Alright.